are thrilled to invite Kenny Bors, a recruiter for sports media technology who serves others through talent acquisition, helping them achieve their goals and finding roles in their desired positions in industry. Kenny, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Excited to meet and share a little bit about what I do and what our company does. So my name is Kenny, as you heard, and I'm a recruiter here at Sports Media Technology, or SMT, and I've been here for about 3.5 years. And I attended college down in Florida, where I was born and raised for most of my life, Florida Gulf Coast University, and I've been here between Duke and UNC and the Raleigh-Durham area for about 7 years now. And so, yeah, it's kind of a little about me and where I started and kind of where I'm at now.
That's really awesome. So tell us, how did you get into a position working for a sports tech media company?
Yes, very fortunately, I would say to start. I really, really love what I get to do. Always grew up wanting to work in sports and wanting to be on ESPN somehow, some way, as a lot of us do. And as I was going through school, kind of started to veer towards maybe a sports agent track and potentially going to law school. So studied political science in college. While I was in there, started volunteering and coaching first youth and then high school basketball, and really fell in love with it and thought this might be the way that I'm going to work in sports. So instead of going to law school, I opted to go into teaching after I graduated college and taught for several years. I got an opportunity to work with one of my good friends and ended up in an HR position and learned a lot in that role. Went back to teaching a little bit when I moved here in North Carolina. And I saw this company and I was like, this is perfect. I've always wanted to work in sports. I can't believe this company's here. I first of all had to check and make sure it was real and it wasn't something that was kind of trying to fake me out. But, doing the research, it was real, and applied several times before I ultimately got hired here. And so a little bit of persistence and the right timing. When I was hired here, we had just signed a big deal with the National Hockey League, and it was during the pandemic. And we were building a remote production studio to support hockey broadcasts, and we needed to hire about 100 people. So they were adding a recruiter. And, that was one of the things where the director of HR saw a lot of transferable skills from what I've been doing and was lucky enough to get hired for that, and had to hire about 100 individuals to work on those hockey broadcasts that first year in about 2 months. So it was hit the ground running, but was able to do it. Not just me; it was a great team effort. But yeah, and from there, just kind of grown and tackled a bunch of different stuff with the company.
Wow. So you really have a well-rounded career and kind of toggled back and forth between teaching and then what you do now. Can you tell us a little bit about those transferable skills that you mentioned?
So communication was a big one. Being able to present, being able to build teams from my coaching experience, also kind of having an idea and understanding of people from different backgrounds and how to kind of make those individuals or find those that would work best for them. And so that was a big one. Being adaptable and being able to work in a couple different industries, being able to learn and pick up and understand what's going on. Being able to research is a big part. When you're teaching, you have to dive in and research and understand, this topic, whether it's something in history or something in mathematics. Where here, coming in, I have to do a lot of research as I'm hiring, understanding how do these teams work, what are they looking for, what skills do they need. So I would say the communication, the ability to identify talent and understand, how individuals work well together, as well as the ability to research for some of the main transferable skills to help pull over, as well as a love for sports. I think that was one, and having a passion for that certainly was a big part as well.
You clearly have a love of sports. We have a few questions from the students. Did you play sports growing up?
Yes, yes, I did. I played baseball originally and found it to be a little slow for me. So I moved into basketball, which was really my favorite and one that I loved, and played all through high school and then in intramurals in college and a little bit after, just in rec leagues. Also played football and through shot put in track and field. So I was a three-sport athlete through high school, and then played in intramurals in college. And some of my best friends still to this day are football teammates or basketball teammates. So yeah, it's big athlete, and I don't know if I would say I was very good, but very involved as an athlete.
That's awesome. So, would you say that your love of sports, playing sports, being in those competitive surroundings, kind of prepped you in a way for the job that you do now or the job of teaching as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Certainly the discipline. I think that's a big part of it, and dedication. And when you think about sports, we always think about game days, and those are the most exciting times. But there's a lot of preparation and a lot of hard work. And we see individuals playing sports, and it's like, yeah, it's fun when they're playing, but there are hours and hours that go into that. So kind of having that discipline, dedication towards long-term goals is something that I kind of learned from that sports space. Certainly being competitive, and that's a good kind of skill to have. Want to make sure that I'm doing my best and challenging myself to represent us as best I can as a recruiter. And being, when it comes to having a job and trying to hire somebody, there might be a good candidate that's entertaining a couple different companies. So I kind of have to compete against them a little bit. So I enjoy that challenge of competing and trying to find us and showcase us as best we can. So yeah, so definitely the competitive side, definitely some discipline and preparation. And then just working with the team, I think is a big part of that as well. Something I've gained. A lot of the sports I played growing up were team sports, and you really kind of have to understand like how you do your one part. As football, I was an offensive lineman, so not the most glorious position. So I am blocking for somebody else to score a touchdown. So kind of understanding your role and succeeding in that, and knowing like, hey, at the end of the day, we want to have our team score more points than the other team. So I kind of embracing that role within a team aspect as well translates to what we do here.
I love that. Thank you so much for kind of, laying out the comparison because kids, students that are on the call today, maybe they have a love of sports and it's, how do they transfer those skills that they're learning right now in those sports to the career and corporate world. So thank you. Let's turn it around a little bit. And, so you're hiring and you're looking for the right fit for a lot of your colleagues to build these teams out. Talk to us a little bit about what sports media technology is and some of the roles that you fill.
Yeah, so we have been around for 40 years, and a lot of people have seen our work without realizing it. And we give a lot of credit and give a lot of the credit goes to our clients who we provide services or technology for. And so we hire folks a number of different roles. Obviously, it starts with the engineering and the technology side of that. So we hire individuals that can code on computers and design programs to function in an appropriate way. So they'll be coding different visuals that might overlay on top of a broadcast, like a score bug or a different statistical pop-up that might happen there, taking in data and showing that, or taking in stats and showing that. We also have coders and developers, designers that we use computer vision for some of our more advanced technology, which essentially trains a camera to look at the field or look at the game as we would as a human. And so there's a lot of coding that goes into that, a lot of math that goes into that. So definitely pay attention in math class if you're interested in being in coding. And so we hire individuals that will design those programs that can be attached and fed into the broadcast to kind of show what's going on. We also have data analysts who will work with different leagues or athletes or teams on how to analyze and utilize data that either we're collecting or a third-party company is collecting to help improve performance or improve performance as an athlete or improve it as an individual or as a team. And then we also provide services at broadcasts and at events. So we hire individuals who will either travel all across the US, setting up and operating technology for different sports broadcasts. I think we've got 20 to 30 events that we're on site at this week. We also have individuals who are planning and setting up and operating different technology or different systems of ours at different sporting events that you might see if you're attending an event. So if you're attending a golf tournament or a tennis tournament or a major marathon. So we hire a lot of folks who go to college and study computer science, sports management, data science, communication/broadcast. Those are probably some of the main disciplines that we hire from and some of the main roles that we'll hire those individuals into.
Wow. So really, there's a lot of different career paths that go into working at sports media technology. It doesn't have to be just as a recruiter or somebody who has a love of sports, but you can be in computer science, data, you mentioned sports management, so all kinds of career tracks that are available. I love that. Can you tell us some of the things that we might have seen on some of these sports broadcasts that are some cool features?
I did want to touch on, you mentioned the love of sports. That's a big thing. We have a lot of folks that love sports. I know we have a lot of folks that sports might be an interest to them, but might not be the passion like I would showcase here. I know, especially on that software and development side, solving problems is really the thing that they love the most. And sports presents a unique problem. And sports broadcasts and sports events, there's so many variables to it. And so it's kind of like a unique challenge or unique puzzle to them. And so when talking to some of those folks that are coding and engineering, so behind the scenes, at least early on, they're trying to understand how does shade affect this, or how does this angle of this racetrack or this golf course impact our technology, or the different how's weather implemented. And I'll talk about a big technology and how weather impact it in a cool way. So the most popular thing that you've probably seen from us is the yellow first down line. And that is something that we invented. I think this is now the 26th year that that has been around. And I can very, very, very minimally remember football without it. And a lot of folks can't even remember football without it. So that yellow first down line graphic on football broadcasts is something that we invented. And we still have individuals who are traveling to different shows and setting up and operating that. So any Sunday night football broadcast you see on NBC, we're operating that yellow first down line. Any Thursday night football broadcasts on Amazon, we're operating that yellow first down line. Some of the CBS shows, some of the NFL Network shows. And that's a really cool one. There was, and building off of that, there was a couple Thursday night games where there was snowstorms that came in during the broadcasts, and we actually had to design a snow field that would show up on top of the snow that was compiling on the football field and be able to add not only the yellow first down line but hash marks on that. So that was a really cool one to see. The yellow first down line on a good non-snowy day is using a lot of the white paint, the white lines, white markers to kind of know where they're at on the field. And so when it's snowing and that's all white, that's a pretty big challenge. So that was cool to see us develop a snow field and it be used a couple times this past football season. Anything that you see in Professional Fighters League, which is an MMA show on ESPN, throughout the summer, we are operating and designing a lot of the graphics for that. Any serve speed that you see at most tennis tournaments is something that we're providing as well. The shot link in golf and PGA, as well as now Live Golf, it's something that we invented and will either send to them or operate depending on which tournament it is. A lot of the score bugs that you might see on CBS are things that we've helped provide to them. And now some of the cool stuff in hockey and some of the either player or vehicle identifiers that you might see pointing out an athlete or a vehicle, or in horse racing are some of those things that we provide. So hard to say on a given week that, if you turn on sports, you won't see something that we were providing to some of those shows.
Yeah, wow. I mean, you're really elevating the experience for the viewer. And we, as viewers, sometimes have no idea what is going on the back end. So that really paints a huge picture on how much the work that sports media technology is doing to create that experience for us when we're watching sports at home. You mentioned horse racing, and obviously we have students from Kentucky. Have you done anything with the Derby this year or in the past?
Yes. So we have been heavily involved with the Kentucky Derby and the Triple Crown, which is the Kentucky Derby, the Preakness race, and the Belmont, which are all coming up. Or the second two are coming up here, one this weekend and one in a couple weeks. So we are actually on site. We've got a team that's there. It was really cool to see a couple of individuals attending it 2 weeks ago for the Kentucky Derby that started here as interns with us. And so I got to know them as they were college students, and now they are full-time employees here, and they were going and traveling and operating different graphics for the Kentucky Derby. So some of the cool things we were doing there is a touch screen, which we don't do for a lot of shows, but that's a cool one to roll out, where they'll use a touch screen and the talent, as they call it, the person that's on camera will be moving and showing and touching different things. So it's cool to see us be able to deploy that to a show. And then we'll have the kind of the standings or positionings showing you where each horse is as they're racing around the track. It's something that we'll provide there, as well as our ISO track technology, which is used in a lot of sports. It'll point out and can identify and show you, here's this horse. They might show you in the live feed as they're going around the far side of the track, or they might show you in a replay and say, all right, here's this horse here, and it's in third place now, and watch as it moves into first, and things like that. And so we don't just do that for the main horse race, we do it for some of the races that are leading up to that as well. But we had 5 individuals that were out there. I believe it was 5. There's 5 in the picture that I saw. So we had 5 individuals who were out there operating some of those technologies and working in conjunction with NBC's top producers and directors to make sure that they had a good show. Now those individuals are getting ready for the second leg of the Triple Crown. So it's really cool to see us there. And I know we've been testing some of our advanced technology for some advanced data that we're going to be able to provide to horse racing in the future, which will be exciting to see what comes with that and if that'll be involved in future derbies.
That's really cool. I mean, from the technology you're talking about now, And then looking back 26 years ago to that yellow first down line, technology has grown exponentially, it sounds like, in the sports world. Like I mentioned, elevating that experience for the viewers. What are some other things that you see for the future of sports media?
One of the cool things and interesting things, me as someone that enjoyed playing sports video games growing up, has been kind of the gamification of sports. And I think about 10 years ago or so, you really saw sports video games trying to look as much like the real broadcast as possible. Well, now it's kind of flipped, where the broadcasts, in knowing like the demographics have changed and are getting younger and younger, and now someone like myself, who grew up playing video games and is used to what video games look like, the broadcasts are trying to incorporate more and more video game elements into it. And so you see that with certain camera angles in football where it look like almost like look like a video game versus reality. One of our cool products is the ghost car in NASCAR, and now it's being used in IndyCar. So the Indy 500 is coming up here soon. And so if you were a racing fan and you watch that, you'll see they use a video game engine called Unity, and they are developing a model, taking real data from those race cars and inserting it into this video game model that makes it, it shows a video game recreation of what's going on. So that's really, really cool to see. And now they can show you, here's the real car performing in the real broadcast, and here's a video game model of how it performed in qualifying or pass races and things like that. Or they can show it in replays. That's been a really cool element to see. We do the player and puck tracking for the NHL, and we make a 2D video game model called sprites that they'll use sometimes to highlight, what happened on a certain play. So you'll see it almost looks like a coach's clipboard, I think is what ESPN calls it. So you use this video game recreation to show you, all right, here's these players and here's how this play developed. It's been cool to see that used in venue at hockey games. So when teams are playing in the playoffs, sometimes they'll have watch parties and they'll use our video game technology to display on the ice what's happening as the teams are playing thousands of miles away across country in the Stanley Cup finals. So that's been a cool thing to see, and seeing more and more of that video game element get incorporated is cool to see. And then there's rule enforcement's another big one. So using software, using AI, training systems to kind of help detect what's going on. If there's any soccer fans, which imagine there are some and they watch the World Cup, they'll see technology that can tell if a player is offsides. We're not providing that to the World Cup yet, unfortunately, but we do have a system similar to that, or a competing system that we've got, they're trying to use in other soccer federations that can tell and use a computer kind of graphic and show, okay, this is offsides. Tennis, line calling, same thing. If a ball is hit out of bounds, you'll see a video game recreation of how is that shown? Was it in or out? And it'll zoom in on it. And then tying back into the games, I guess you see some video game animated alternate broadcasts, which we've provided some technology and we provide tracking for the NHL. So if you watch any NHL alternate broadcasts and you see a cartoon-based version of that, they're using our tracking data and putting video game characters on there to show you, here's what it looked like if Big City Greens is playing in this hockey game instead of the actual teams. I know NFL did that as well with Toy Story. We weren't involved with that, but it's another example of kind of the gaming in there. So definitely using game technology, using camera tracking and hardware tracking is going to be a big one, and kind of like rule enforcement, using more computers versus just referees or officials on the field.
Lots of advancements, lots of rewards, it sounds like, in working in sports media technology, whether you're on the recruiting side or the computer science side, or you're able to be physically at an event. We do have some questions, though. What are some of the challenges that you face in working for this type of company or this field?
Sports is great and it's awesome. And I definitely don't have to make nearly the amount of sacrifices that some of my teammates do. But if you think about sports, their nights, their weekends, their holidays. And so a lot of our individuals, whether if they're traveling to an event, they might be traveling and gone for several weeks at a time. Or if they're working on an NFL broadcast show, and if it gets to Thanksgiving, we all love to have a good meal and watch football on Thanksgiving Day. But there are hundreds of people, not just with SMT, but with those networks and with those stadiums that are going and working on those holidays. So they're giving up time with friends and family to help bring us and provide us these shows and these sports that we love. And so that happens all throughout the year, not just football, but that's one example I always think of. So there's sacrifices that need to be made. There's weekend work. And even on our development side, if software is being used live on a show, there's somebody probably on the development side and the QA testing side who are on call in case there's an issue. So that's one of the biggest challenges. and just kind of, understanding what that looks like. And a lot of the folks, get into sports, they do love sports, but they really, understand that sacrifice, and they enjoy knowing like, hey, I might have to give this up, but I'm helping provide something that millions of people across the US or across the world are going to get to enjoy. So that's one of those biggest challenges that some folks have to kind of make working in sports, I would say.
Thank you for being so transparent about that because sometimes, maybe they want to be part of this company and some of the amazing things that are going on, but maybe that's not the right fit. Or maybe it is. So thank you for sharing that. What goes into deciding who is a good fit for your company? Like when you're on the recruiting side and you're doing the hires, what are some things that you consider?
Yeah, it's another great question. Being adaptable is one of those things we look. So we do love to see and have a lot of former athletes, whether they were high school athletes or college athletes or professional athletes. And with those, and I guess as you go through to higher levels, you really got to adapt and you got to be able to adjust on the fly. You got to be able to problem solve is another big one. It's something we'll talk about in a lot of interviews. Like tell me about a time something went wrong and like how you handled it. There's if we're having an issue at the French Open for tennis coming up, there's not going to be like, oh, well, I'll get to it tomorrow or let me think about it for a couple of days. Like you got to figure out a solution in 5 minutes. So that's a big thing. How do individuals kind of highlight and talk about experiences where they solve problems like that? Communication's a big one, both written and verbally, and because you're going to be communicating not only internally with your teams, but you're going to be communicating at those events. And you're going to be communicating with clients. And so that kind of ties into customer service. We're very, very fortunate to provide a lot of things that we provide to sports leagues, but we get our contracts renewed and be able to go back to NBC Sunday Night Football because our teams do such a good job supporting NBC. Those are our clients. NBC's clients is the fans, our clients NBC. So we want to make them happy and give them all the tools they need. We want to make sure our technology is operating as best we can. And if they're trying to do something different or do something unique, we're going to try to innovate and find a way to make our technology meet what they're looking for. So definitely looking for communication skills, adaptability, and problem solving. And that customer service mindset has been something we really kind of push now, knowing like it's not a guarantee that we get to do the Olympics or do the Tour de France or the Kentucky Derby. So our teams really have to make sure we go above and beyond to meet our clients' expectations.
I really appreciate that you kind of touched more on some of those skills that are necessary for some of these positions. If I'm in middle school or high school, as most of the students watching today are, what are some steps they can take if they want to kind of explore the world of sports media technology or maybe, do some classes, internships? What direction can you point them in to get started?
As middle school might be a little early with anybody nowadays, no matter what field you want to work in, I would say, looking into what data analytics is like. I think it's something we all work with data, even as a recruiter, whether I'm hiring for that role, understanding, how to use data is just a huge thing. And as each of you are growing up, it's going to become more and more valuable and it's going to become kind of like an expectation. Whereas like mathematics might have been an expectation 20, 30 years ago. I think that data analytics and how to understand, and how to use data is really, really big. No matter what you're doing, whether it's with us or with sports broadcasts, it's a huge part of all industries. As you're getting into high school, if you're interested in the coding things, look into robotics clubs, and that's one of those things that always kind of stands out just because you're going to get to work with a lot of different pieces of technology. Our engineers are working with cameras and working with other hardware systems. So, working in robotics or being part of robotics clubs is one of those things I've seen translate well. If you're interested more on like the broadcast side, look into your school's either student news or school sports broadcasts. If you go to a school that's got some pretty big sports teams, they might be doing different broadcast things there. That's really big as you get into college too. A lot of times we look for folks that have worked with their college broadcasts, whether they might be University of Kentucky or University of Cincinnati or University of North Carolina, like looking for folks that have worked on their college broadcast and been part of that environment really helps them get used to the environment of what is it like to work in a live show. And honestly, like where if you just have a student job, some of those things do build skills. Like we love and look for people that come from certain like restaurants or food industries because there's a lot of parallels between working in broadcast and working in a restaurant. Somebody orders something, it's got to be ready by X amount of time. There's no waiting. You got to work really, really quickly. you got to work with a lot of other individuals to make sure that meal is ready. So I know Chick-fil-A is one of those things where I may be like, oh man, I'm just working at Chick-fil-A. But honestly, like if we see somebody work for Chick-fil-A during high school or college, we're like, hey, they've probably got good customer service skills and they know how to work in a fast-paced environment. So those are some of those things just that I've seen in my time here that could be helpful for a student. But yeah, definitely look into the kind of data analytics for anybody. Definitely helps to get an idea of like how to use data and how to understand how data is collected and things of that nature.
Data is huge nowadays, even in my field within the events and marketing realm. So I definitely 100% agree with you. And I love how you touched again on those transferable skills. So no job experience really takes you away from building your career path. It can only help you. So that's really good advice that even if someone works at Chick-fil-A, they could potentially have a job with sports media technology in whatever field. May not be the STEM fields, but you did mention there were some other fields aside from broadcasting, like sports management, or maybe some people that are on site for events. Can you kind of highlight a little bit what those look like as well, and how people could get started?
So they are planning a lot of different things that go into events like golf and tennis or major marathons or CrossFit games. So if you think about a football stadium, a lot of that technology is in that football stadium. Basketball arena, they have a lot of that stuff. They use it for concerts and things like that. Golf tournaments and tennis tournaments, they don't really need video boards year round. They need them for a few weeks or a week. They don't really need all an IT network that is set up to where people can connect and be able to input what they need to do in a internet system. So we help provide a lot of those services to major golf tournaments and major tennis tournaments and medium-sized tournaments as well. So those individuals are working with our clients. So it might be Augusta National for the golf majors, or it might be the U.S. Open in New York for tennis. And they're understanding what all that they need. Then we have a number of different travel teams. We have a traveling IT team. We have a traveling video production team that'll set up the video boards and operate graphics there. We've got a traveling electronics team that will be setting up and installing LED boards and repairing any issues that might come there. So those individuals are coordinating everything that kind of goes on to putting those events. They're prepping that stuff in our office and warehouse. And then they're traveling to those events and they're making sure that everybody has what they need. They're troubleshooting issues as issues come up throughout those events. They're talking to our clients and making sure, hey, they want to get this done by a certain time, or they want to add this, or there was an error, something needs to be changed. They're making sure that they get those things. So when we look for folks there, we look for people that have organized or planned different events and planned different things. So if they've been part of a club, they might have organized their club's volunteering or their charity drives or different things like that. So look for some folks that have kind of taken a step up. They might have worked in the intramurals department at their college, and while they're playing those, they're also organizing their tournaments or organizing, where the referees are at, or every person has these things. So saving some people that have dealt with those different factors and plan things out really kind of helps us kind of recruit folks into those areas that are successful.
Well, it seems like there's a ton of opportunity there. Thank you so much for sharing your story and your career track with us. It's very interesting. It's very fascinating. And just would you say that this is your dream job and you'll be around to stay in this for a while?
Yes, yeah. Hopefully, when some of y'all are graduating college, you will be looking up SMT and you'll see that I'm still here and reaching out like, hey, I remember you coming by and talking to our class, and I studied computer science and I'd love to be a software developer there, or I studied communications and I'd love to work on broadcast there. Yeah, it's really been a blessing. I think what we do is awesome, but really who I get to do it with, the people I get to work with, they're incredibly hardworking, they're incredibly collaborative. I don't really work on that many shows. I think I've worked on one, and so I don't code or design. And so I really lean on our teams to help me understand what they do. And every time I go to work with them and have a list of questions, I walk away with more answers. So I've got a great group of people here. I came for the sports. I stay because of the people I get to work with. And hopefully some of y'all will be reaching out in 7 years or so, graduating and saying, hey, I'd love to see if there's opportunities to work at SMT.